الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. إنه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد عباد الله، فإن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as all forms of praises belong to Allah. And I bear witness that there is no true deity worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that his Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is his final and last messenger. We who believe have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do not die except in a state of Islam, in a state of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We who believe have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say the truth. If you do so, you would rectify your actions and correct them. And whomever believes in Allah and His Messenger, then he has already attained the ultimate success. Your brothers and sisters in Islam, the best of guidance is the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the best of speech is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran. And the worst of matters are newly innovated matters in this religion. Because whatever is newly innovated in this religion would lead you astray. Whatever would lead you astray would lead you to the hellfire. Before I start, inshallah, I would like to remind our brothers and sisters in Islam that attending the khutbah of Friday is an act of worship. And being an act of worship, one of the things you should be doing is focusing and paying attention. And what ruins all that and nullifies the reward of attending the khutbah is actually talking during the khutbah and fiddling with things, including your phones and looking at messages and so forth. So I would ask you, just a reminder, if you have your phone with you, turn it off or put it on silent, put it in your pocket, save the greetings of your friends that come in and are excited to see you till after the salah, and don't indulge in any form of speech or talk or poking or anything like that. And just a reminder for the men, the closer you are to the imam, the greater the rewards. The further away, the less the rewards. That being said, I would like to ask all the students of NUI to get off the walls and find spots in front and move forward. Jazakumullah khair. Today, inshallah, I wanted to talk about a bit of a modern common phenomena that we are experiencing. And it seems to be a global phenomenon. But the reason I want to address it is because the end overall result of that phenomena, if not being neutral in terms of sins, it is contrary to the teachings of Islam. What I'm referring about to is, if we look at our daily routine or daily life, things that we spend time in it, ever since the creation of the smartphones, the different forms of screens and entertainments and audios that we listen to, you'll find that many of us tend to move from one form of, we'll call it entertainment, to the next. Whether it is moving from different platforms of social media and alternating between them and the next, moving perhaps from Facebook to Snapchat to Instagram to whatever other forms of social media you can think of. We tend to have 5, 6 accounts. We move from one to the next. Whether it is we move from that to watching reels or shorts or YouTube videos, moving perhaps to, when we have more time, watching episodes of different series, and sometimes even binge watching. Moving to watching perhaps movies or games, and then video games, and then in the middle of it, the chats. If you look at the average of what we're doing, the results are quite interesting. So on the way over here, I had asked somebody to kind of help me with just to pull out the statistics. And of course, it doesn't fall to everybody, and this is just the general average perhaps in the world. But you have to remember, different individuals, different age groups have different utilizations of these things. But if we just look at, for example, just the screens, this is the daily average, give or take. Facebook is about 20 minutes. Online shopping, that's daily. Online shopping, the average is 2 hours. Instagram, the average is 53 minutes. Snapchat, half an hour. YouTube, 90 minutes. Spotify, almost an hour and a half. Watching TV, 4 hours. Video games, 5 hours. Now, of course, I'm going to assume this is not talking about halal or haram of what we're watching or engaging in. No, that's something that should be settled in the first place. I'm going to assume that these things or the hours that are being spent are purely in things that are neutral and perhaps permissible. But the only possible description we can describe what's going on is perhaps excessive indulgence in instant gratification. That's the phenomena we're witnessing nowadays in our modern world. It's the whole aspect of instant gratification. And it's not something that is done moderately, but no, this is something that is done excessively. It's almost become what you can call dopamine junkies. That entire aspect of instant gratification is a very vicious cycle of seeking that dopamine release, the anticipation of something that is good. I'm not going to go into the biochemistry of it, of how it affects our brains, and eventually because of that, the reduction of dopamine receptors, and we have to indulge in more, and that recycle ends. But what is the end byproduct of that? Why is this all bad? Why is it negative on the long run? Now, once again, I'm mentioning this because it's contrary to our Islamic teachings. A religion that has been given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then in itself is a way of life that brings balance to our lives. A perfect, beautiful balance that is meant to bring us stability, to enable us to attain the best in this world and the hereafter. So what are the negative aspects of that excessive indulgence in instant gratification? But first, I'm going to address why this is happening. Why is it now something that is predominant in our modern world? And I could think of three things. One is the prevalence and ease of access. Quite often when something is accessible to us and it's in large numbers, we find that we excessively indulge in them. It's understandable when we have a buffet in front of us, a lot of food. None of us is going to fill their third of their stomach. What ends up happening is we end up filling a lot of our stomach to the point that sometimes we're unable to breathe or walk. We feel lethargic afterwards. If we have a lot of snacks in our cupboard at home and it's in front of us, not inside the cupboard but outside, what do we end up doing? Every time we're passing by, guess what we're doing? We're going to eat from it. When there's a lot of amount of things, prevalence and ease of access, that can result in exaggerated or excessive form of indulging in it. And so if you think for our smartphones, for example, things that we carry with us now, I'm not going to say 24/7, but almost, really almost, anywhere between 17 to 20 hours a day with us. We're attached to it. The ease of access that we have on these smartphones and different devices makes it so easy to take it out anytime, and whether we're playing games or chatting or surfing or shopping, whatever it is, it results in that behavior of excessive indulgence. Once again, in instant gratification. That's why we're doing this. The second reason is perhaps the lack of self-control. The lack of self-control over these matters towards immediate gratification. We're unable to be patient with putting off that gratification to a later gratification, a delayed form of gratification. And so that inability or lack of self-control makes things worse. The last reason that makes things possible in this way, that makes it possible for us to have this phenomena of exaggerated indulgence of immediate gratification, is in reality how much time we have on our hands. The funny thing is we claim that we have no time and that we're busy. But if you remove the 4 hours of TV and the 5 hours of gaming and the 2 hours or 3 hours of screen time that we spent and 2 hours of online shopping and the average of 41 messages a day that most of the time are not important, if they're of course business related or meeting related, that's completely different. You're working. But the reality is the majority of that is not for working purposes or educational purposes. It tells us how much time we have on our hands. Because of that free time, we tend to indulge in these things. So the consequence or the negative consequences of those things is that overall, our level of productivity is down as human beings. Or individuals, our level of productivity in whatever field we're in is affected. Our level of productivity in our family is down. Our level of productivity in self-development is down. Our level of productivity of spirituality and getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is down. Of course, there's a reason for it, which is the other problem is that because of this over influx of dopamine and instant gratification, the repercussions it has on other fields in our life is that it makes us no longer have motivation to do other things. And I'm sure this sounds familiar by now. It shows a lot in the younger ages when they have no motivation to study or work or get out of bed. Or even with the adults, the same thing, no motivation to do your chores or connect with friends physically, meeting them. We're doing other things such as acts of worship, reading the Quran, focusing, prayers, prolonging it, even doing the adhkar after your prayers or praying the sunnahs. We find ourselves dragging our feet towards those aspects or other things that we find not entertaining. We no longer are able to withstand our threshold. Let me rephrase this. Our threshold for pain and boredom has become very low. By pain, I don't mean threshold of pain, but the pain we see of we think of boredom or just unable to deal with certain stresses has become low because of this whole cycle of what's going on. That's an imbalance. The lack of patience with doing tasks that require long periods of time and focus is an overall complaint across the board. We're no longer able to do tasks on an average majority of people that require long periods of time or periods of focus. That is very interesting. In fact, sometimes we self-interrupt ourselves. When we have that phone beside us for no reason without a message, we pick it up and look at it. You have a message or not, and put it back down again. That is self-interruption. In fact, that's classified as an addictive behavior because we want to know if there's new messages or what's been posted recently or somebody tagged me or liked or whatever the case is. It's a self-form of interruption. And what's interesting, on average, it happens every 10 minutes. That is not healthy. That is not normal. But yet, it's the norm that we live in. We end up having poor impulse control because we got used to that immediate gratification. And once again, it shows up a lot worse in younger individuals, and they grow older. The older they grow, you'll find that still persisting. Lack of control. Now, when I say this is contrary to the Islamic teachings, it's because Islam teaches us at least 3 different lessons that counter all these things. It gives us a better balance of life and productivity in every aspect. One of the first things that Islam teaches us is the importance of self-control and doing things in moderation. Even if it's halal, by the way. You have to remember, I'm talking about moderations and things that are permissible. I'm not saying don't do it, but it's just the whole aspect of moderation, even in things that are impermissible. The lack of self-control and excessively indulging in things that are halal, what it results is a reduction in the ability to control ourselves, which makes it easier for us to cross that boundary of the halal and haram. And that should be acknowledged by all of us. The Prophet ﷺ in his teachings, and even the companions of Allah anhum, they understood this. So I'll give you a couple of examples, for example, on food or doing things. The Prophet ﷺ, in a weak hadith, but it was also mentioned by Umar bin Khattab, which tells you that the teaching is true. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ مِنَ السَّرَفِ أَن تَأْكُلَ مَا اشْتَهَيْتَ. The saraf is a form of lack of control or excessiveness. And so from excessiveness is that you eat everything you desire. From excessiveness is eating everything you desire, because this reflects lack of control. Now, we're not, once again, it could be disliked, but remember, there's a reason for that teaching, is because with that lack of control, it's easier to cross the boundaries. Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, when he saw Jabir ibn Abdullah, he saw him holding some sort of preserved meat. And he asked him, what is this? And Jabir ibn Abdullah said, اشتهيت لحما فاشتريته. I desired meat, so I bought it. And so Umar al-Khattab said, أو كلما اشتهيت اشتريت. Every time you desire something, you buy it. Does that sound familiar? The impulsiveness of buying things because we want them. Right? The impulsiveness of clicking on those things because we desire to watch more. The lack of control. In fact, self-control is inherent in the religion of Islam. Whenever we are asked to leave our worldly affairs behind, to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to pray. Whenever we are asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not cross certain boundaries, that is a form of self-control that we're required to fulfill. But even once again, in the area of permissibility, there is that moderation. Even in the instinctive aspects of food. When the Prophet ﷺ, when he instructed, and he said it's sufficient from what you eat enough that would keep you able to stand straight, which means give you enough energy to stand up straight and do your daily routine. And if you must go beyond that, then a third of your stomach. That is the moderation. But I'm sure we are in a time where it went beyond that. It's no longer that. And so if you look at this, Islam teaches self-control and doing things in moderation. But unfortunately, that excessive indulgence in immediate gratification has ruined all of that. And this is why we find ourselves sometimes finding it very difficult to abide by Islamic teachings and regulations, to pray the 5 daily prayers on time, to leave what we're distracted by, whether they're video games or whatever the case is. This is part of the reason that we're seeing this. Now, the second thing that Islam teaches us is the importance of delayed gratification. That is the opposite of what's happening. To be patient and leave the immediate gratification to something that is more beneficial. Almost every sin we fall into has some sort of pleasure. Almost every sin that we fall into has some sort of immediate gratification. But what Allah is asking us to do is to delay that gratification, leave it aside, be patient, don't indulge in it for a greater gratification that is Al-Jannah, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. Whomever fears the position of his Lord and forbid the self, وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ, the self, from its desires, then Jannah is his abode. Whom of us will get Jannah now in this world? None of us. This is an obvious delayed form of gratification. And it's not just a short period of delay. We're talking about a life delay. It's something we understand. It's inherent that we, in our teachings, the whole aspect of self-control and patience and delayed gratifications is important. Now, does it mean that there aren't periods of we can indulge in immediate gratification? No, there are. But once again, it's a whole aspect of moderation. And even the immediate gratification that are permissible in Islam, amazingly in our body, it has a perfect balance that it counteracts that vicious cycle, for example, of dopamine. It does. For example, when you fast the entire day, refrain from food, and then break your fast in the evening, you'll find that naturally you're not going to eat as much. Naturally, usually most people, that's how your body is. Yet you are satisfied and you're happy and there's gratification. But it's amazing it happens in moderation. That's what we're talking about. Now, the third teaching that Islam had taught us in this aspect, the importance of taking advantage of our free time. the importance of taking advantage of our free time and being productive in ways that will bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said, ni'matan, two blessings. Maghboon, we are cheated in, that we essentially deceive or that we take for granted, that we're unaware of their blessings, they tend to go without taking advantage of them. We cheat ourselves in them. As-sihhat wal-faragh. Your health and your free time. Quite often we utilize our health and our free times in ways that are not productive. And so the Prophet ﷺ is pointing out to this aspect, no, use it in ways that are productive. Use your health for your time of sickness and weakness. Use your free time for a time where you become busy and regret not utilizing it. Use your life before your death. That's the whole idea of utilizing this. And in fact, one of the interpretations of when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the verse, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore by al-asr, one of the interpretations of al-asr over here is referring to time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by time because of how important it is. That all human beings are in a state of loss except those who utilize this time with iman and ordaining what is good and being patient with it. That is what we're talking about. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to practice Islam as holy as we can, in the best wholesome way as we can. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to the straight path and to keep us upon it. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لكم إنه غفور رحيم. إن الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Brothers and sisters in Islam, I presented a problem and how Islam encourages the opposite of that issue, and that's excessive indulgence in immediate gratification. But what is the solution to the problem that we have? It's something that we have to be creative with. And I can't say I have all the solutions because I don't. And the reality is, when we're trying to deal with this modern aspect of excessive indulgence, it will require a lot of effort. We will find it difficult. I want us just for one day, pick a day, to put your phone on the side and not indulge in any movies or video games, just for one day, and see how difficult it is. The more difficult it is, it will reflect the amount or level of behavioral addiction that we have. It will also reflect and will show us how much free time that we have. Just a small test. And you're going to realize how difficult it is for you to fill that time with more productive things because we got used to that instant gratification. You find that your patience with reading the Quran is pretty low. Even though, alhamdulillah, we had like 30 days of Ramadan. And it's interestingly, like a lot of research showed that 30 days is the perfect amount for us to get something in a routine and leaving old habits. A lot of the time, after Ramadan, we go back to our old habits. And it makes it more difficult. But just gauge yourself, and you're going to find out the size of the problem that we're facing. And perhaps you can be creative with some of the solutions. But it's important that we fix this problem before it even gets worse. Because it's not getting any better. Now, once again, this is on the assumption that everything we're doing on these devices is halal, permissible. Let alone that if it's something that is haram, that's an entire whole ball game. We just added a more complicated dimension into the problem that we're facing. Because then it makes it even more difficult to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because our hearts are affected by those sins. Pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes even more difficult because we just put further distance between us and Allah. Once again, it's important to kind of realize this and face it quicker and sooner than later. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات وارحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. وربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم نسألك العفو والعافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم إنا نسألك الفردوس الأعلى وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل، ونعوذ بك من النار وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وانصرنا على أعدائك أعداء هذا الدين، وارحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. وقوموا إلى صلاتكم يرحمكم الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد